Welcome back to Hopetales. Tonight, we bring you a story of courage at 30,000 feet, where an ordinary flight attendant became an extraordinary hero. Flight 912 had always been known as a quiet overnight journey between New York and London. At 11:30 p.m., the boarding gate buzzed with the usual late-night travelers, business people clutching laptops, exhausted tourists clutching their passports, a few families trying to entertain restless children. The air smelled faintly of coffee and jet fuel, a scent Lina Harris had grown accustomed to in her 2 years as a flight attendant. Lina moved through the gate with practiced ease, her navy blue uniform crisp and spotless, her smile welcoming. She knew each passenger wouldn't. Notice the little details? The careful adjustment of tray tables, the quiet inspection of the emergency exits, the subtle glance to ensure that no seatbelt was twisted or left undone. But Lina noticed. That was her way of controlling the chaos she couldn't always predict in the skies. "Welcome aboard. Flight 912 to London," she said cheerfully to the last few passengers boarding, her voice calm and friendly. Her dark brown hair was pulled back neatly into a bun, a small badge reading Lina Harris, flight attendant, pinned to her chest. She had faced rude passengers, turbulence, and countless mechanical delays, but tonight, something in the air felt different. Not wrong exactly, but tense. The plane hummed quietly as passengers settled into their seats. Some were asleep already, cocooned in blankets. Others tapped impatiently on screens, headphones blaring. Lina moved gracefully down the aisle, offering smiles, helping with bags, answering questions about seat adjustments. Everything was ordinary. Everything seemed safe. The cockpit door clicked shut behind the pilots. Captain Elias Rowan and his co-pilot, a routine that signaled the final preparations for takeoff. Lina exchanged a brief glance with Elias through the small cockpit window. "Everything ready?" she mouthed. He nodded, a faint smile of reassurance. Lina returned to the aisle, pausing for a moment to watch the passengers. She noticed a man in seat 21C shifting uncomfortably. He wasn't carrying much, just a small black backpack. But there was something in the way he tapped his foot and avoided eye. Contact that made Lina's instincts flare. Flight attendants were trained to notice unusual behavior, and although it could have been nothing, something about this passenger's tension set off alarms in her mind. She made a mental note to keep an eye on him. The flight attendants performed their final pre-flight checks. Oxygen masks, seat belts, emergency exits, all systems normal. Lina glanced down the cabin once more, making sure the small details were perfect. She returned to the galley at the rear of the plane, checking on the beverage cart and double-checking the supplies. Everything in its place, everything ready. As the engines roared to life and the plane started rolling down the runway, Lina felt the familiar thrill of takeoff. She had always loved flying. The quiet moments where the world fell away and everything else seemed small beneath the wings. She walked down the aisle one last time before takeoff, offering reassurance to nervous passengers. "It's going to be smooth," she said. "We're in good hands." The plane lifted into the night sky, the city lights of New York shrinking into the distance. Lina returned to her station, observing the passengers. The man in 21C had stopped tapping his foot, but now he kept adjusting his sleeve as if hiding something. Lina's stomach tightened. She forced herself to stay calm. There was no reason to panic, yet. For the next hour, the flight remained peaceful. Passengers drifted in and out of sleep. The gentle hum of the engines and the soft glow of overhead lights created a sense of security. Lina moved down the aisles quietly, offering water, checking on the sleeping passengers, smiling politely at those awake. She knew how important it was to maintain calm in the cabin. Panic could spread faster than fire. Then suddenly something shifted. Lina noticed the man in 21C glance nervously around the cabin. He reached slowly into his backpack. Lina's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to remain composed. She couldn't let the passengers sense her anxiety. She moved toward the man, casually asking if he needed anything. Her tone friendly, natural. He hesitated. His eyes flicked to hers, and for a brief moment, she saw something cold, calculating. He nodded politely, but the motion of his hand suggested he was concealing something, a weapon perhaps. Lina's training kicked in. She subtly pressed the button under the counter to alert the cockpit. A small red light flashed silently in Captain Rowan's cabin. unnoticed by the passengers. Lina retreated, keeping her distance but maintaining her friendly demeanor. Her mind raced through every possible scenario. She had been trained for a hijacking, a passenger with a weapon, a threat to the crew or the plane. She kept walking down the aisle, offering water to nearby passengers, keeping her posture relaxed. Every movement was calculated, every word carefully chosen to avoid triggering alarm. Time seemed to stretch. The plane continued its smooth ascent, the cabin lights casting long shadows over the faces of unsuspecting passengers. Lina's pulse quickened, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. Calmness was her weapon. Panic would ruin everything. Suddenly, the man in 21C made his move. In one swift motion, he pulled something from his backpack, a small knife, glinting under the cabin lights. Lina's instincts screamed, but her training held her still. She engaged the passengers around him, leaning slightly toward them and whispering urgently, "Stay calm. Follow my lead." The atmosphere changed instantly. A mother clutching her child gasped. A businessman froze, staring at the man with the knife. The tension was tangible, like static in the air before a storm. Lina's mind raced. She had to act. And she had to act now without causing panic. The plane continued its journey over the Atlantic. Lina took a deep breath, ready to face the crisis head-on. She was just a flight attendant, but she understood that in moments like this, ordinary people could do extraordinary things. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. And tonight, Lina Harris was about to prove that she had more courage than anyone on board could imagine. The soft hum of the engines was suddenly pierced by a sharp, tense movement. Lina Harris had been glancing down the aisle when she noticed the man in 21C shift again. This time it wasn't subtle. He pulled a small, metallic object from his backpack, a knife glinting under the cabin lights. A hush fell over the passengers as the tension spread like wildfire. A mother instinctively clutched her child tighter. A businessman froze mid-drink, eyes widening. The usual chatter, the quiet shuffling, the clicking of devices all ceased. Lina's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. Panic could be as dangerous as the weapon itself. "Everyone, please stay calm," she said softly but firmly, moving closer to the front of the plane. Her voice was steady, controlled, carrying a weight that demanded attention. She could feel the fear radiating through the cabin, but she refused to let it take hold. The man took a step toward the center aisle, knife raised. "No one move or—" His voice was shaky, betraying his own nerves. But it was enough. Lina knew that even a moment of hesitation could turn deadly. Quickly, she assessed the cabin. Exit doors were too far. There were passengers around him. Some could be shields, some could panic. She needed to create distance and distraction without provoking him. Lina took a deep breath and began to speak directly to him, her tone calm, almost conversational. "Sir, I see you've got something there. Let's just talk, okay?" Her hands were raised subtly, not threatening, not submissive, just human. The man hesitated, confused by her composure. Lina continued, moving slowly toward him, keeping her movements deliberate and non-threatening. She noticed a flight attendant colleague near the rear galley, and with a subtle nod, they shared a silent plan. They would need coordination. Meanwhile, she signaled the cockpit again with a small tap under the counter. The red light flashed in Captain Rowan's cabin. Elias immediately understood there was a threat. The co-pilot activated the transponder code for hijacking, which would alert air traffic control and military authorities. The man's attention wavered as Lina kept talking, her words calm and distracting. "You look tired." "Long day?" she asked softly. "We can make this easier for you if we cooperate." A bead of sweat ran down his temple. His grip on the knife loosened slightly. Lina knew she had to act now to take control of the situation without drawing violence. She subtly guided a nearby passenger to inch backward, creating a small space. Another passenger, a tall man in business attire, instinctively stood up to protest. Lina gave him a quick, firm glance freeze. He sat instantly, understanding the stakes. The cabin's lights flickered slightly as the plane adjusted altitude. Outside, the Atlantic stretched endlessly beneath them, moonlight reflecting off the clouds. Inside, Lina's focus sharpened. Every heartbeat, every passenger movement mattered. Every second counted. Suddenly, the man lunged slightly toward the galley, trying to block access to the back of the plane. Lina, thinking fast, moved in front of him, keeping her voice calm but firm. "No one else needs to get hurt. Let's just take a breath." Her eyes never left his. She kept her stance slightly angled, ready to step aside or act physically if necessary, but hoping to avoid that. He looked around the cabin. He saw frightened eyes, he saw trust, he saw a calm authority he couldn't break. For a heartbeat, the entire plane seemed suspended, a single moment that could go either way. The rest of the crew subtly moved closer, ready to assist Lina. She didn't act yet. She needed him to surrender on his own. The tension was unbearable, like a live wire vibrating through the cabin, and then a sound from the cockpit, a faint chime. Captain Rowan had opened the internal intercom, speaking directly to Lina. "We're coordinating with authorities. Hold him. You're doing great. Just keep him talking." Lina's voice softened further, humanizing herself in a dangerous dance. "I know you're scared. We all get scared. Let's just put the knife down, talk this out. No one needs to get hurt." The man's hand wavered again. His knuckles whitened around the handle. Sweat dripped from his forehead. And then, in a moment of unexpected clarity, he dropped the knife onto the floor. The cabin exhaled collectively. Relief and disbelief mixed in equal measure. Lina quickly stepped back, keeping her eyes on him as her colleagues moved in carefully to restrain him, ensuring he couldn't grab another weapon. The passengers, still frozen, watched as the threat dissolved in an instant of courage, calm, and presence of mind. Lina felt her knees weaken slightly as adrenaline surged through her. She had done it. She had stopped a hijacking without anyone being harmed. But there was no time to celebrate. The plane was still in the air, hundreds of miles from London, and authorities were coordinating interception at the nearest airport. She turned to the passengers, forcing herself to smile, her voice steady. "Everything's under control now. Please remain in your seats until we land. You are safe." Applause erupted quietly at first, then louder, as the passengers realized the heroism that had just unfolded before their eyes. Lina's colleagues gave her a proud nod. Captain Rowan's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are in good hands. Thanks to our crew, your safety is our priority." Lina sank into her station for a moment, letting the adrenaline ebb. She glanced at the knife on the floor, a stark reminder of how close they had come to disaster. And yet in that moment, she also realized something profound. Courage could come from the most unexpected places. Ordinary flight attendant had faced an extraordinary situation and survived. Behind her, the cabin crew quietly checked on passengers, whispering instructions. "Stay seated. Stay calm. Keep hands visible." The trained crew moved like shadows, their calm demeanor reinforcing Lina's authority. The passengers, terrified, followed her lead, their trust in her instinctual. Then a small miracle. The man in 21C wavered. His hand trembled as he raised the knife slightly, then hesitated. Lina seized the moment. "Sir, it doesn't have to end this way. We can all get home safely. Just give me the knife. Please." The knife lay on the floor, glinting under the cabin lights. Lina's breath came in quiet, controlled bursts, her mind running 1,000 calculations per second. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the danger had not fully passed. The man in 21C was restrained, but the flight was far from over. Panic could return at any moment, and the plane was still hurtling through the night sky over the Atlantic. Lina moved quickly to reassure passengers. "It's okay now," she said firmly, smiling where she could. "Please remain seated and keep calm. Everything is under control." Her words were more than reassurance. They were a shield, a way to stabilize the cabin while authorities coordinated the next steps. Behind her, the cockpit door clicked. Captain Rowan's voice came over the intercom, calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. The threat has been contained, and we are heading toward the nearest airport for your safety. Please remain in your seats. Crew, continue monitoring." The passengers murmured nervously, still trembling from the ordeal. Lina knew that while the immediate threat was over, fear was contagious. She moved down the aisle, speaking softly to individuals. "You're safe. Keep calm. Follow instructions." Her tone had to be soothing but authoritative, a delicate balance. She glanced at the restrained hijacker. He was sweating, his eyes darting around the cabin, realizing he had failed. 2 flight attendants flanked him carefully, keeping a firm grip on his arms. Lina approached slowly, maintaining eye contact. "Do not resist authorities when we land," she said quietly. "It's over. No one else needs to get hurt." The hijacker nodded reluctantly, fear and frustration etched across his face. Lina could feel the tension in the cabin slowly ease, though the passengers remained visibly shaken. Children clung to parents and some adults wiped away tears, still processing the adrenaline that had surged through their bodies. Lina returned to her station and pressed a few buttons to check oxygen levels, cabin pressure, and passenger vitals. Every detail mattered. She was not just a mediator. She was the stabilizing force keeping the plane intact, keeping chaos from spiraling back. Captain Rowan spoke again, this time to Lina directly over the intercom. "We're 5 minutes from redirecting to emergency landing. Keep the cabin calm. You've done amazing." Lina's heart pounded, but she kept her composure. The moment of crisis was passing, but the next phase required vigilance. Then a sudden jolt rattled the cabin. The plane hit unexpected turbulence. Passengers screamed involuntarily as the plane dipped slightly. Lina acted instantly, moving down the aisle with hands steady. Helping a frightened child grasp the seat in front. "It's okay," she said softly. "Just hold on. We're fine. Breathe with me." Her calmness spread through the cabin. One by one, passengers mimicked her, breathing slowly, focusing on her presence rather than the tremor of fear. Lina's instincts had taught her that leadership under pressure was contagious. Courage could be mimicked, fear too, and she chose courage. As the turbulence subsided, Lina noticed a passenger struggling with a seatbelt. Without hesitation, she crouched beside him. "Here, let me help you," she said, fastening it securely. Each small act reinforced trust, creating a chain reaction of calm. She moved swiftly, efficiently, yet carefully, scanning the cabin for potential threats or panic points. Meanwhile, flight attendants coordinated discreetly with Lina to prepare passengers for landing. Drinks were secured, electronic devices stowed, and emergency exit rows verified. Lina spoke softly to nervous passengers near the front. "You're doing great. The plane is stable. Keep calm and listen to instructions. We'll be on the ground soon." Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly, clouds illuminated by the faint glow of the moon. Lina could see the horizon hinting at the approach of the nearest airport. She mentally calculated timing, runway approach, and passenger readiness. Every action needed to be precise. Mistakes could be catastrophic. Finally, Captain Rowan announced descent. "We're beginning our approach. Crew, prepare passengers for landing." Lina's focus sharpened further. She moved through the aisles, checking seatbelts, adjusting overhead bins, and whispering reassurance. Each word, each gesture was a stabilizing anchor. Suddenly, another passenger panicked, standing abruptly, hands raised. Lina was immediately at his side. "Please sit down. You're safe," she said firmly. Using a combination of calm authority and gentle touch, she guided him back into his seat. The rest of the cabin observed, tension slowly melting under her leadership. Lina glanced at the restrained hijacker one last time. The man avoided her gaze now, resigned. Authorities would meet the plane on the ground, and the crisis would finally be over. She exhaled quietly, though no one noticed. Adrenaline still coursed through her veins. As the plane touched down with a controlled but firm landing, the cabin erupted in cautious applause. Passengers clapped, some crying, some hugging each other. Lina's colleagues nodded at her, pride and relief mirrored in their expressions. Captain Rowan's voice resonated once more over the intercom. "Thanks to the crew's professionalism and bravery, Flight 92 has landed safely. We salute the courage of our crew, especially our lead flight attendant, Lina Harris." Lina smiled softly, humbled, exhausted, but deeply aware of the impact of her actions. She moved down the aisle, helping passengers with their carry-ons, guiding them to the exit. Each step reinforced a profound truth. Ordinary people could rise to extraordinary challenges. A small child tugged on her sleeve. "You saved us," the child whispered. Lina knelt and smiled. "We all worked together. Everyone stayed calm. That's what saved you." The words were modest, but her heart swelled with quiet pride. As the passengers disembarked under the watchful eyes of authorities, Lina realized that the night's events would be remembered, but not for the fear, for the courage that had emerged at 30,000 feet. She had acted decisively, with calm and skill, turning a potentially deadly situation into a story of hope, bravery, and humanity. And as the plane emptied, she took a deep breath, ready to face whatever challenges came next, because courage, once discovered, never truly fades. The wheels of Flight 912 screeched softly against the tarmac as the plane rolled to a stop. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, their lights painting red and blue flashes across the fuselage. Inside, Lina Harris exhaled quietly, her body trembling from exhaustion, adrenaline finally ebbing away. The ordeal was over, the passengers were safe, and the hijacker would be taken into custody. The cabin, still filled with whispers and stunned expressions, slowly transformed into one of relief and gratitude. Children clung to their parents. Business travelers wiped away nervous sweat, and the elderly passengers nodded repeatedly in thanks. Lina moved carefully down the aisle, her uniform wrinkled from hours of tension, her hair slightly disheveled, but her eyes shone with quiet pride. "Ladies and gentlemen, the plane is safe," she announced, her voice calm but warm. "Please remain seated until the doors open. Thank you for your patience." The passengers nodded, still absorbing what had just happened. Many stared at Lina as if seeing her for the first time. Not just a flight attendant, but someone who had literally saved their lives. One elderly man reached over the seat in front of him. "Thank you," he said, his voice trembling. "You saved us all." Lina offered a small, modest smile. "I didn't do it alone. The crew, the passengers, everyone stayed calm. That's what made this possible." She kept moving, ensuring the aisles were clear, and guiding passengers toward the exits as instructed by the authorities. Meanwhile, Captain Elias Rowan and his co-pilot were already speaking, with the authorities at the cockpit door. Lina paused for a moment, watching them from the aisle. She had worked with Captain Rowan for 2 years, but tonight she realized something profound. The crew was a single unit, and courage, when shared, multiplied exponentially. The restrained hijacker was escorted off the plane by security personnel. Passengers craned their necks to catch a glimpse, some in disbelief that such danger had been among them. Lina kept her eyes forward, focusing on the people she had just guided through a life-threatening ordeal. A mother approached her with tears in her eyes, holding the hand of her young daughter. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines cooling down. Lina crouched to the child's level. "You were so brave," the little girl said softly, hugging Lina's arm. "You saved us." Lina's smile was gentle, almost shy. "We all did it together," she replied. "You were very brave, too." She stood slowly, feeling a warmth in her chest. In that moment, she understood the real impact of courage. It wasn't just about stopping a hijacker. It was about keeping hope alive in the hearts of everyone around you. Passengers began to disembark, some pausing to shake Lina's hand, others whispering words of gratitude. Cameras flashed from airport personnel documenting the event, and authorities asked for statements about her actions. Lina maintained her composure, answering questions succinctly but honestly. Her priority remained clear: the passengers' safety and the reassurance that fear had been met with courage. Outside the plane, the night air was crisp and calm, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions inside. Emergency responders guided the passengers to buses that would take them to the terminal. Lina walked last, ensuring no one was left behind. She paused for a moment at the bottom of the stairs, looking up at the plane, the metal bird that had carried them through danger. Guided by skill, bravery, and human determination, a journalist approached, microphone in hand. "Miss Harris, how did you remain so calm during such a terrifying situation?" Lina's lips curved into a humble smile. "I focused on one thing: keeping everyone safe. Fear is contagious, but so is courage. I just made sure it spread the right way." Her words, simple yet profound, resonated deeply with those listening. The passengers were escorted into the terminal, where families awaited, tears and hugs flowing freely. Lina watched silently, her heart swelling with the knowledge that she had made a difference. She had not only prevented tragedy, but had restored hope in a situation that could have ended in disaster. As she finally walked toward the exit to reunite with her fellow crew members, she noticed Captain Rowan approaching. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You were incredible tonight, Lina," he said, his voice low but filled with sincerity. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone stay so calm and focused under pressure. You saved lives. I don't just mean the passengers. You saved all of us in the cockpit, too. You gave us a chance to finish our job safely. Lina felt a lump in her throat, but nodded humbly. We all did our part, she replied softly. But deep down, she knew that sometimes ordinary people were called to do extraordinary things. And tonight, she had answered that call. As she looked back toward the plane one last time, Lina realized something else. Courage was not about fame, accolades, or recognition. It was about presence, clarity, and the willingness to act when fear threatened to paralyze others. And even though the passengers might remember the terror of the hijacking, they would remember something else too: the calm, steadfast presence of a young flight attendant who refused to let fear win. In the days that followed, stories of Flight 92 and Lina Harris spread worldwide. Headlines hailed her bravery. Social media erupted with gratitude and admiration. Yet Lina remained modest, insisting that the crew and the passengers themselves were the real heroes. But in quiet moments, when she closed her eyes and remembered the frightened faces of the passengers, the controlled chaos of the cabin, and the glint of a knife that never had to strike, she allowed herself a simple truth. She had done something incredible. She had faced danger and emerged not just victorious, but a beacon of hope. And as the plane sat silently on the runway, the stars twinkling above like a million tiny reminders of the night sky, Lina Harris knew that courage, when discovered, would always shine brightest in the darkest moments.